Hi, I'm Allie. Join me in creating this crystal braced Mandi bracelet, and you can use a variety of materials. So make sure you check out the supply list in the description below to gather up everything, and we'll get started on this variation of right angle weave. So to begin the Mandi bracelet, I have out 3 colors of 4mm, that second generation Potomac Crystal, Tanzanite, Peridot, and then the Amethyst. I also have 2 of the Miyuki gold seed beads in both 8.0 and 11.0. The reason I'm using the same color is because what that's going to do is allow the crystals to stand out more because they become less of the focus and they're not distracted by the seed beads. I have a size 11 needle on some size 6 white dragon thread. I'm going to leave about 12 inches at the end, and I have a stop bead at the end of my tail. To begin, I'm going to begin with a unit of right angle weave, which is going to include 1 8/0, followed by an 11/0 on either side of my first crystal. The right side of the box is going to be another 8/0, and then the bottom of the box is going to be another combination of 11 crystal 11. I'm going to let all of those beads fall down next to that stop bead. And then I'm going to take my thread and needle back through that original 8/0 bead, coming in from the opposite side, which looks like I'm coming in from the stop bead. That creates my first little right angle weave unit here. I'm not going to decorate this first unit. I'm going to go into the second and then we'll decorate afterwards. So I'm going to sew over to the right hand side of the unit, going through the 11, the crystal, the 11, and I want to come out through the 8/0 seed bead. Coming out that 8/0 seed bead now, I'm going to do another version of a right angle weave. This time we're going to be using our Tanzanite bead, and we're going to add 1 11/0, followed by 4 Tanzanite beads. Each Tanzanite bead between it is going to have 2 11/0 seed beads. So there's my second Tanzanite that's going to sit at the bottom. And I'm going to go to the other side, which is going to be Tanzanite, 2 11/0s, Tanzanite, and then ending with 1 11/0 seed bead. So when you look at the beads and see them in their order, they are going to be that 1 seed bead, the 4 Tanzanites with 2 11/0s in between, and then 1 seed bead ending. From here, I'm coming out the bottom of my 8/0 seed bead, and I'm going to go into the top of that 8/0 seed bead and bring my thread and needle down toward the base. Now we're going to have some fun and add some seed beads that are going to go in between with our crystals. I'm going to sew back through my first 11/0, my first Tanzanite, and come out through the 11/0 in the middle. You're going to be exiting between those 2 11/0s, pick up one of your 4mm bicones, and then 1 11/0 seed bead. If you want to switch it up and you have some 15/0s on hand, you can also do 3 15/0s and create a little picot trim. Take your thread and needle and go back through the bicone, and then continue over through the next 11/0, crystal 11/0, and out between the next 2 groupings of 11/0 seed beads. Give a nice tight pull so you make sure you don't show any extra thread, and add 1 8/0 seed bead between those 2 beads, and proceed again to the next spot where you have the 2 11/0 seed beads. Having those 2 11/0 seed beads then right there in place, we're going to repeat what we did on the other side, adding 1 4mm crystal and then 1 of our 11/0s. That's going to hold it in place. Let that all drop down towards this unit. So back through the crystal, and then go back through and trace through all of your beads, going the whole way around them, because just like the rest of the right angle weave, we want to make sure that we're coming out through the right hand side. So we want to exit through this 8/0 seed bead. To exit through that 8/0 seed bead, I'm just going to kind of spin the project around, so the whole way through. When you go over on the side, right along the 11/0 seed beads, don't go back into the crystal, just skip over the crystal, go right into the 11, and then I want to come out again through that 8/0 seed bead. That's going to be my first unit in the design. So getting a little closer now here, next up, we are going to do another center unit, or the connector basically. That's going to consist of 1 11/0, 1 crystal, 1 11/0, then a 6 or an 8/0 for the other side, and then back again to crystal with the 11/0 on either side. We're going to sew into the bottom of that 8/0 seed bead because, believe it or not, we are doing right angle weave. with just a lot of extra beads in between. And now what we're going to do is come up next to the crystal. This time we're going to get ready with our amethyst bead, sewing through the next 11-0 before our bicone. Coming out before that bicone is where we're going to add that next little portion of crystal. We're going to pick up one of the amethyst, pick up an 11-0 seed bead, and then just like we did on the opposite side, we're going to get ready to sew into and over past the bicone. We're going to go back through the crystal, not through the 11-0. The 11-0 is going to act as a stopper bead at the end of the crystal. Give a nice tight pull, making sure that you don't see any extra thread there. Coming out the bicone then, you're going to repeat. So amethyst, 11-0. Let that drop down next to your project. Go back through the amethyst and then go the whole way through the 11-8-11. And you'll notice then the amethyst almost sits like a jumping jack along the side of that crystal. We're going to do the same thing now on the bottom. So we're coming out between the 11-0 and the crystal. We're going to add the amethyst color, add the 11-0 to hold it in place, drop that all down next to my project, go back through the amethyst and back through the next peridot crystal. Exiting that next peridot crystal, we put one more amethyst in place with that 11-0 to act as a stop and hold it there. Go back through the amethyst, and this time back through those original 11-8-11. Now, just like we did with the last unit, we are going to get the whole way back to come out through that 8-0 seed bead. So to do so, you're just going to sew through the crystal, down through the 11, down through the 8, and out. This is going to be repeated now throughout the bracelet. So you can see kind of that jumping jack look that you're getting in this Mandi design. From here, we're going back again to that 1-11-0, followed by 4 crystals. Those 4 crystals on the tanzanite are going to have 2 11s between each. And then they're going to be flanked with an 11-0 seed bead before sewing back into my 8-0 seed bead that's already there. So you want to make sure you have those 4 crystals in place. You want to make sure that you have, oh, I got 5 there. I was getting a little excited. 4 crystals in place. And after those 4 crystals, before and after, you want to make sure that you have an 11-0 seed bead. Once you have that on there, we're going back through that 8-0 seed bead, coming back into the top. So whichever thread the 8-0 is coming out of, which side, you're going to go to the opposite side because this is just a right angle unit. Pull that nice and tight, and now we're going to go in and add our peridot beads. So our peridot beads again are we're going to sew over, so we're coming out through those 2 11-0 seed beads, just like we did with the amethyst beads. We're going to add 1 peridot, 1 11-0 seed bead to act as an anchor. Let that all drop down. You'll notice that I pull my thread and not my needle as I'm creating tension. That is good needle habit and good thread habit to get into. You're then going to sew through the 11 crystal 11. And the reason you want to pull your thread and not your needle is because if you're constantly pulling at your needle, you're going to damage the thread that is currently in the eye of the needle. Add your 8-0 seed bead along the right side. Sew over then through the 11 crystal 11 that goes to the top. Add your next peridot bicone with the 11-0 to act as a stopper. Pull that all down next to your project. Go back through the peridot, skipping over the 11 so it can work as the stopper. Back down through the original beads. And then as I end this unit, I'm going to repeat. Sewing back over now to that 8-0, going through 11 crystal 11, 11 crystal 11, out through the 8. And then once we do that, we go back into that center kind of jumping jack section. When you finish up the length of your project, it's time to do the clasp. Now, I've already done the clasp on the ending side here using the tongue for an infinite clasp. And I'm going to show you going back and putting a needle, taking off the stop bead of the beginning side, how to do that, because it's the same on both sides. Now I've done the whole first unit without my amethyst beads. We're going to be adding those in so that way at the end it does look like the rest of the project. However, we're going to build those into the project. I'm making sure that my clasp is facing up just like the tongue is facing on the other side. I'm coming out of my 8/0 seed bead. I'm going to add 115, sew through that soldered loop of the clasp. You can use a wire guard if you want. I'm keeping it real simple, just using the seed beads and the crystals, adding one more 11 and sewing into the opposite side of that 8/0 seed bead. I'm going to run my thread and needle back through here one more time. And then we're going to add in the last of our 4mm bicones. I like doing this because it adds the thread in at two different points basically that you're reinforcing. Sewing over right next to then through the 11, coming out next to the bicone, going in, adding my amethyst, my 11, and spinning around just like I would be normal. And then my last step is going to be to use the thread that I still have. Remember, we left 12 inches at the start, so you should have plenty to weave back through the clasp one more time, and then also to tie it off along the piece. So I'm doing just as we have been, adding in those 4mm bicones next to my peridot bicones. And you can do this with all different sizes. So don't think you're limited to 4 with this. You can switch out to 6s on your right angle weave and then 4mm for the beads that stick out. Or if you don't want them to have such a jumping jack or firecracker look, you can always do 3mm on the outer edge. So you can really use a ton of different materials and a ton of Potomac Crystal bicones for this design. So as I come out here, adding in my last of my bicones, and I would love to see this in red, white, and blue because it does have a little bit of kind of that firecrackery look. You're going back through the bicone, pulling nice and tight down towards the project if you need to. And then once again, we're going to use this opportunity to go through that 8mm bead, go through the 11, the clasp, and again, make sure that your clasp is sitting correctly through the 11, through the 8, and then we're going to tie off on the project. So I did this on the other side. And what I like to do when I'm tying off the project before we glue on the piece for the clasp there, for the infinite clasp, is to take the thread back through and weave it back through that right angle weave a little bit in the design. And I just want to show how pretty it looks on the wrist. This could be an anklet. It will bend if you want to do a nice necklace as well for that piece. And again, use a variety of materials for this design. And if you do so, please comment below and let everybody else know in this community some switch ups and some ideas that are coming from you. Thanks so much for joining me in creating this Mandi bracelet. Remember, if you want to, you can use all different materials for this, making it into a necklace, an anklet, continuing for a multi-strand bracelet using different sizes of crystals. Don't forget, as I just said, to comment below if you do any of those modifications because it helps out this amazing beading community. As always, thanks for joining and stay tuned for our other inspirational videos.